And welcome to another edition of the Nerdy Agent Podcast. I'm your host, Luke Pedersen, with my brothers and fellow nerds, Josh and AJ. Did you guys hear the news that we're going to be upgrading our background soon?
Oh, we are.
I talked to Kyle last week. He had some really good ideas.
How are we going to... We're going to chisel out all of this bricks?
Yeah.
It's getting chiseled? We'll have to do it on a Saturday so there's no workers here. I mean, seriously. So it's not...
We're going to... He said you can get...
He said you can get
branded foam soundboards. So, like, they have our logo and they're, like, the sound deals.
Oh, nice.
I don't know. We're
going to do the Nerdy Agent Podcast logo and the advisory logo next to each other.
And EXP. Do we have a Nerdy Agent Podcast logo?
Yeah, we do.
Don't know if I've seen it. Is it just say the Nerdy Agent Podcast?
It's three like bobbing heads with glasses.
Oh, that is what it is. Yeah.
I do both. I think you better go make it like 2 years ago.
Add that onto the list, Kyle. We'll do both.
How many? So
that'll be exciting.
We at least know the Wolves are going to have 0 losses by the time this gets released. But how many wins are we going to have? 3? Is it 2?
When's their first game?
Tonight.
Oh,
9 p.m.
Oh, man.
Nice and early.
It's at 9.
And the bigger news is tomorrow night is opening night for the Bronze Upper League Minnetonka Adult Men's Basketball, the Advisory Realty Group scrimmage.
Our best player stepped on a nail, guys.
There's an open competition for the next best player.
We need another best player, especially now that we're in the upper bronze division this year.
So the good news is my foot's been better every day. So I am thinking there's no bone contusion.
You know what I heard, Luke, is that even when you step on a nail and you can't move that well, you can still make 3-pointers. I've heard that rumor.
I can barely walk.
That's tough.
So that's the issue.
So we can be like, have you like hobble up the court and then like look like they'll put their worst guy on you and I'll just pass it to you and you'll just knock a 3.
It's gonna be a mixture of Kurt Schilling and Kirk Gibson in the finals.
Sure.
With Luke post nail stepped on, he'll be so bloody, he'll be bleeding out the side of his shoe.
Yep.
And he'll just be draining 3s.
Who's the starting rotation tonight? It's
Ask Jordan. I think he'll make it.
Probably. I think we maybe only have 3 players.
That's
right
tomorrow
now.
for the advisory group. Sure.
Oh, for the Timberwolves?
Whichever 5 show up are starting tomorrow. For the Wolves, though, is it Conley, Ant, Jaden, Julius, and Gobert?
Yes.
Have they released that?
No, but I think that Finch said Randall's
pretty
going to start.
Standard. Yeah.
I want Nas in there, but that's just me.
I would put Randall on the bench and have him score 25 a game and just be a black hole every time he enters the game.
And DiVincenzo too. Let's go.
DiVincenzo's the best.
It's going to be fun.
So this week we're going to talk about the home builder confidence, just a little bit in depth as far as where it's been the last couple of years, kind of a refresher, because I know we talked about it like one of the first weeks. I think we talked about it when we started the podcast, and we haven't hit on it much since then. So to start, just as a refresher, can one of you tell them what the home builder confidence is?
You want to take it, Josh?
Yeah, sure. It's a monthly report that comes out. Essentially, the National Association of Home Builders surveys different builders across the country. Their goal is to get information on different data points surrounding confidence and then to put it into a 0 to 100 scale. So they ask a myriad of questions, but the algorithm essentially determines that based on the answers they get, essentially how confident builders are at any given point in time. When you marry that up with data around like starts, so like how many new houses have been started, permits, etc., you can get a good sense of expectations are on the supply side for building. So we've talked about this a number of times, but when we think about the market and what drives pricing, what drives behavior, competition, etc., it's pretty basic supply and demand. And so the more new houses that are being built, that's like the number one way in which you can affect the supply side, which is where we've been short now for a long time. So it's really important in that sense because you really want to make sure that builders are building, because that's your best way to take a buyer and essentially add one to supply without adding a new buyer as well. So basically you have a new build, buyer moves into house, buyer sells current house or is a renter, but you're essentially adding to the supply side without changing the buy side.
Did we ever have an even buyer's market based on month supply in the Twin Cities when you were starting?
I think it was like 3.8 in October of 2014, which was
the highest you got.
Yeah, this is actually my 10th. This marks my 10th year in real estate.
Hey,
ooh, confetti!
Hooray! Where's the confetti cannon?
I had a question. Do we think that the folks who created the National Association of Home Builders were thinking of their acronym before they named it?
Nah.
Or do we think that maybe they could have done like Home Builders Association of America and been HBAA, and maybe that would have been better.
HIBA. The funny thing about it too is everywhere I see it, it's like capital. It's not all capitalized. So yeah, this one it's capital N and then it's just AHB lowercase.
which just looks weird.
It looks so dumb.
Yeah, it's super
Does
strange.
look really dumb.
But yeah, I mean, we've seen obviously with interest rates going up, there are other states where you can build for a reasonable price close to the median home price. We could probably look that up of where the new construction price is closest to the median home price and like what state.
Which isn't the case here. We're probably double the median.
Here it's about 200. Yeah, I mean, you can get a single family home in certain markets in the metro for 600-ish new construction for like a small tract build. And I think our median sale price is like 380 right now. Mm-hmm. But the majority of them, like in the area where we are, you're looking at, as good as you can do is around 750, 800,000.
It's crazy. And they go up to like 2 million so fast.
Really quickly. I wonder is it the land value that drives the ability to build a house at the median price point in certain areas?
And regulation.
Regulation, Minnesota.
Material costs.
We have really high regulation too, which leads to materials that cost more money. We also
costs being higher.
Labor costs are higher, and we also have basements on all of our houses,
which hurts.
Yeah.
The one thing that
really add like $40,000 for a basement usually.
If you buy if you have clients buying a $700,000 new build, I have one of these right now, right? So they're moving into a $700,000 new build, but they're selling a $380,000 or they sold $430,000. But like you add supply in the entry level typically because they're moving usually out of an entry level into a new build. So while new builds aren't necessarily accessible to every buyer in the market, what they tend to do is push somebody from a first-time homebuyer price point to a second-time homebuyer price point or a move-up homebuyer price point and open up supply in the first-time homebuyer place, which is where we need it the most.
And one of the arguments, I don't think this is the only constraint on inventory we have in the Twin Cities at least, but it is one of the main arguments is the builders are a lot more close to their chest. They don't want to go out and build more than they can sell. They're even trying to build less than they can sell a lot of
Well, I think a lot of that, and I've talked with clients about this often, because I had one where we were closing out a neighborhood and we ended up buying for $100,000 less than the exact same floor plan across the street. And she said, can I just not put this on the MLS? I don't want to like piss everybody off. And I was like, I don't care if I get credit on the MLS. My client got a $100,000 deal on this place. Mm-hmm. But you see, until they get to the end of the development, that stuff starts to happen. They try to control the prices as good as they can because they don't want them to go up or down too quickly, right? If they start slashing prices, all the folks who bought with that builder rep and drive by the model every freaking day and they're leaning out the window and saying, what the heck, man? Like, you sold me a product for way more money now you're selling for you screwed me over. So they want to keep the prices moving along at like an inflationary level.
And the only way to do that is by controlling the supply.
Exactly.
So I just want to talk about what the actual numbers have been recently on the home buyer new build National Association of Home Builders Confidence Market Index. So you said 100 is like
that's the top.
Would be the top. So in January of 2020...
Well, I think 100. So just to clarify, though, indexes are based off of a moment in time. I think the index is based off of like 1970s or 80s or something.
It starts,
and they felt that was the year that they said is 100. That's the benchmark, correct?
Okay. No, I think 0 is the low point and 100 is the high point. 50 is median.
So that would have been 50 is whatever the first year they used to index off of. Yeah.
So in January of 2020, it was 75. Then COVID hit and it collapsed. I think this point's important. So the bottom of when all that happened, April of 2020, nobody really knew what was going to happen. It went to 30. Obviously, then the market, at least in most areas, continued to do pretty well. November of 2020 got up to 90, which would have been the high in the last 5 years for sure.
That's when AJ had to flip a coin to see if he could get a house.
That was a thing in Minnesota. In Minnesota, you were telling them you wanted to buy a house. I had this where they put the names in a hat and drew one. That happened.
Did you get
more than two?
No.
I won the coin toss. It was awesome.
It was only 2 people though. We were talking about like 10 buyers. Then, obviously, stuff continued. We were around 70 to 90. January of 2022 was the top before the drop at 83. And then it was kind of signaling inflation's too high. Rates are going to go up. Rates went up. And then it dropped all the way down to November of 22. And rates were priced 7.5 to 8.
Yeah.
Around there. 33. It's like almost the scariest moment of right when COVID happened. Dropped almost to that when the rates, and then we've just kind of been cyclically following up to 60 in the summer, back down to 35 in the winter. Right now in September, it was 41. There was a little blip in August when the rates got really good for like 2 weeks, and then the index went out, I think, and they were like, oh, the rates are going to keep going down, and then it got worse again because then the jobs report, obviously.
I bet if I was able to do some sort of like a momentum of rates correlated to this index, they'd be very well correlated.
It looked
so like
it was
year
almost-
over year change in rate, like versus the prior year, that correlated to the home builders index, I bet would be really well correlated.
You laid that over with the rate as well as sales in general, just the amount of sales.
Yeah,
Which
general
lower
market
rate-
activity definitely
yeah.
is correlated.
It's that's a little bit of calculus.
Isn't
Isn't that
right?
fun?
Yeah.
A little derivative.
So the question on the home builder confidence index, I would say, is how can you, like, why would an agent track this? And how can they use it to their advantage in the market, whether it's sounding good or actually helping people use this index to get deals?
I think when you're talking to somebody who's considering new construction, when you see that confidence go down and you see a neighborhood that is in an area that they might be interested in, and there's several specs already up or going up, it signals to you that that builder maybe, again, it's a macro number, but if you're making a best guess or an estimate, that builder might be a lot more likely to negotiate on that or to offer special incentives or finish the basement for free or do something from a financing perspective or whatever to make it more palatable for that buyer. And you've seen, I mean, we can feel it usually here. There's certain moments when you're like, that builder looks like they're a little overstretched. They got 6 specs going up. They thought they were all going to sell and none of them have gone yet. They got to get rid of some of these things, and you can get some nice prices for your client.
Here's a mock conversation. How's that? So it's, hey, Josh, it seems like there are more listings on the market. Like, are things heating up a little bit? I could respond with, yeah, listing activity is actually up right now. But one interesting thing to note that we've always been tracking is that even when listing activity is up sometimes, that also means that buyer activity is also up. Because if someone is selling a house, they don't just disappear from the market most often. They also are buying a house. So it doesn't always signal that the market is going to get more balanced if there are more listings. In fact, one thing that we track really closely is the National Association for Home Builders, their confidence index, because that tends to be correlated very heavily with new building activity, new starts. And new construction is actually the one way that we can best normalize the marketplace and actually increase the true amount of supply. Because if one buyer sells a house, but then they go buy a house, they're net 0 on the market. But if someone builds a house and someone moves into it, it's a net 1 for the market. So right now that's at 41. It's been trending around 40 to 50, with 50 being like it's okay. Like that's the neutral point. So the builders are feeling slightly below like a neutral level of confidence right now. So that's going to mean we're probably not seeing as many builds going right away, but they're going to keep kind of humming along at a normal pace. But it's not going to necessarily just solve our supply issue right away.
Need more building, more dying, and more single-family rentals to be sold. That's the only 3 ways to impact
Or moving out of state.
the inventory. Or moving out of state. It's a fair point.
The issue is people are moving to Minnesota, from a local
Or if
market.
those folks that, maybe were going to pass away in their house move into senior housing,
Yes,
that is a net 1 positive too. So there's only so many ways, to Josh's point, that we can actually improve the inventory. And we're starting to see inventory improve for buyers a little bit right now. But building is a massive, it's really the biggest lever. If they just built 10% more homes next year, that would really increase the inventory meaningfully.
But if you're an agent, right, and you're listening to this and you're going like, why do I care? You could just copy what I just said. Anytime someone's like, hey, how's the market? Like, it seems like listing activity is up. You could start with that conversation because you're going to sound smarter giving another impact point in terms of how you're thinking about things and showing them that you can think about the market holistically, not just, we're up in pendings.
I open doors and I show houses. Other than that, give them something better. Know the data points, because if you know the data points, people are going to work with you, because it's not that hard to be better than most real estate agents if you just understand the data. The other thing that I think is super important, this is like a general buyer. You could use this index for a general buyer, but I do think that a lot of people, and you might be listening to this might be you, have ran into clients who think, well, I'm just going to go to the builder. Why would I even work with you? What's the point of that? Is there any value in that? And I think that if you can somehow get some sort of a meeting or some sort of a conversation with them about it, and the first thing you say is, do you know what the National Association of Home Builders Confidence Index is? can we talk about this? It's something I talk about with all of my new construction clients. They won't know what that is. And so literally like off the bat, one question, they'll be like, oh man, this person knows more about this than me.
And the other thing you realize, and we've talked about this a couple times, but like if you know their confidence level, you know they're likely going to be more or less willing to negotiate through the process. If you know when their year ends are, you know when they're likely to be more or less willing to negotiate through the process. Good one. And you can save people lots of money because most people just think, kind of like some people go to a car dealership, it's like, well, the sticker price is the price. It's not that way for new construction. It's not that way for cars either, but it's just something that's important for you to recognize that you can deliver value for people that they might not realize exists.
Do you think there's ever a world, professional car dealership negotiator where you anything you get below the sticker price for your client gives you back at like 10%?
I think you'd have to sit there for so long. 'Cause you go to the car dealership and you're there for like 6 hours.
You'd have to have some huge margins. You would just stand out front.
Hey,
you say, hey, I'll negotiate this for you.
Would you like me to negotiate a deal?
Instead of $30,000, you get $25,000, and then you get 10% of that.
They get kicked off the property.
Kicked off the property so fast.
Yep.
That's such a genius idea, though. Well, that's all I have on the home builder confidence.
Great.
If you have any questions about this or specifics as well, feel free to reach out to us. I know that one's a very specific metric, and so it can get confusing for people. If you want to know where we're finding this data, just let us know. But that's all we have on the Nerdy Agent podcast. And as always, remember, be better.
Go Wolves.
Go Wolves. Go Wolves.